Now, you say you went to Annapolis. Now, can you tell us a little bit about, well, first of all, how were you picked to go to Annapolis? Who made the choice and what exactly happened there?
Well, there were, you took an entrance exam, of course, to get in. But prior to that, the representatives and the senators would give exams to determine who would be their first choice. Well, the principal is what they call them. Then there was a first alternate, the second, and the third alternate. Well, everybody took the exam that the senators and the representatives gave. At that time, Jerry O'Connell was a representative from this district, and Senator Murray was from here, and B.K. Wheeler. But you took that exam, then that weeded out probably all but 4 people. They usually had a principal and 3 alternates. The reasoning was that when you took the entrance exam, then if the principal didn't make it, the alternates came into place. Or you didn't take a physical until after you'd been passed the entrance exam. Well, then a lot of kids flunked the physical. Well, then it went to the alternates. And when you finished high school, you were basically supposed to be eligible or able to pass the entrance exam. Very few kids were. Butte Business College was in operation at that time, and there was a man up there named Joe Vanetti. They called him Jumpin' Joe Vanetti, and he was a mathematical genius. Well, anybody that was intending to pursue a career in going to the academy usually enrolled at the business college and took a year up there under Joe Vanetti before they took these exams. Well, then after that you went on into the academy, or you fell by the wayside. When I went, depending on the circumstances, determined the number of vacancies at the academy. When I went, there was, we didn't have a shot at the vacancy in the Eastern District representatives, because that was usually kids from over there, but we had the 2 senators and the representative from here. So usually they had 2 vacancies each one. When I went, the year I went, for some reason, there was about 7 vacancies in this area. I went back there with Jack Nolan, Dan Bailey, Ben Adams. Kids could take enlisted personnel in the service could take the entrance exam too, and there was a certain number of them that they took.
What year was that?
That was in, I went to Carroll. I graduated from high school in '38, went to Carroll the next year, and then I went back there in July of '39. The reason I got on that track was my mother didn't want to see me become a doctor. To the day she died, we both regretted that, because I never would have become a doctor, but I would never go to Annapolis. It was totally foreign to my nature. It's just like this Clinton deal that's going on now. One of the rottenest individuals I ever met in my life, I met in Annapolis. First year I was back there, he was from Georgia, from Gingrich's and Bars country. This kid his name was Bishop. He was an individual you looked at and immediately disliked. He didn't have to even open his mouth or move, you hated him. And as time went on, you found out why you hated him. In Annapolis at that time, the mess attendants were all black. anybody with a menial job was black. The midshipmen took care of their own quarters, toilets and all this and stuff. But the public part of Annapolis, where the people could come in and see what was going on, was taken care of by black corpsmen or black sailors or something like that. It was against the rules, regulations, and law and everything else to have alcohol, midshipmen to have alcohol on the premises. This guy from Georgia, his name was Bishop, I never will forget this. He had somebody in Georgia was smuggling them in some booze all the time. And his favorite fun was when he got a bottle empty, he'd go find a toilet that some black had to clean, and he'd bust the bottle in the toilet, just fill the toilet with broken glass, and then just laugh because he knew some poor black guy was going to cut his hand off reaching in there to fish the broken glass out of the toilet. You know, this is, and here I'm a greenhorn from Butte, Montana. I never saw segregation or things like this in my life, and this wasn't an isolated incident, I know, but to me it was, and I never will forget that. All I have to do is, I can't understand why Jimmy Carter was a gentleman. I mean, there must be other gentlemen in Georgia, but there's 3 I know that aren't.
Did that precipitate some kind of incident, or did you?
No, we just stayed away from the guy. I hated the place to start with. I didn't want to stay there, but I didn't want to quit. I left there after the first half of the year, and then I got mad. There was some chit-chat going around, you know, I mean, how things happen when you're a kid. I decided, well, nobody's going to talk like that, so I took the exam again and made it the second time. And then I knew I was wrong. I mean, it just wasn't what I wanted.
So what happened? There was some articles in the newspaper about which senator or congressman appointed you.
Well, see,
what happened there?
Jerry O'Connell appointed me, but the newspaper credited. What did they credit? I can't. Well, Patsy.
Thorkelson.
Thorkelson got the credit for it, but and then Dad went to up to what's his name up at the paper and objected to the thing, and they told him to mind his own business, as I recall it. And Thorkelson was a doctor too. He was another one of those not Johnny come lately, but I call them sundown doctors. He was a captain on a Norwegian ship and decided to study medicine. Of course, you could do that in those days, I guess. He was a surgeon. I don't know how good or how bad. But when I went back there the second time, there was a lieutenant commander from Butte. His name was Pete Hale. And of course, this is when we were getting close to World War II. And Pete Hale was, his assignment at that year was, he was teaching at the academy. They brought line officers in to teach a lot of classes, seamanship, navigation, whatever. And one day, of course, when you played back there, you didn't leave the place, you know, unless somebody took you with them. Like Pete Hale one day said, well, how'd you like to go over to Washington and we'll go and see Thorkelson? Said it's probably a good experience.
Now, was Thorkelson a congressman?
Yeah, he was a congressman.
A Republican?
Yeah, he was a Republican that succeeded Jerry O'Connell. Anyway, okay, Pete Hale was a personal friend of Dad and family. He was raised here in Butte. can't remember how, but anyway, he got me loose from the academy this day, and we drove over to Washington, 25 miles. We were in Thorkelson's office, and I had known Thorkelson from when I was a kid growing up here in Butte. You know, he was with Dad a lot. And so he's got this office there in the house office building. Nothing but files in it, barely room for his desk. And Thorkelson had a file on every Jew and every Negro that he could lay his hands on. And he was totally out of it. He was going to deport all the Negroes to Cuba and all the Jews to wherever the hell he could get them.
Now, how'd you know that?
He sat right there and told it to us then. It just came right out, you know. I mean, here's this lieutenant commander in the Navy was supposedly a lot more intelligent than I was, and the two of us are sitting there with our mouth open listening to this guy expound about getting rid of all these people in the United States, cleaning the place up.
This is prior to going into the war against the Germans.
Yeah.
Got a guy thinking like that.
Yeah. Well, then he didn't last one term as all Thorkelson lasted. No, there's a lot of these things shouldn't be broadcast, I guess. His nephew is this Dr. Carl Sullivan. It's in Butte now. Thorkelson's wife, this doctor's father were sister and brother, I think. But he was totally bughouse that way, you know. And I never will forget driving back to the academy. It's Pete Hale. He didn't say much. He just look at him and sit there shaking his head all the way back. Then the next thing that they had the neutrality patrol going then on the East Coast. You know, the Germans had submarines off the East Coast of the United States. This before the war started, was officially declared. And never will forget that when that was like in the fall. Well, at the end of that term or semester, you would call it, the academy had to make some adjustments because they needed officers out in the fleet. And in fact, that was that class ahead of me, let's see, the class of 43, they all graduated a year or a year and a half early because they needed manpower. But anyway, what I was getting at is they changed Pete Hale's assignment. At the end of that semester, they took him from Annapolis and gave him a new destroyer and sent him out on the neutrality patrol. There was a lot of, I never saw him again since then, but I often wondered, would have liked to have sat down and after all this sunk in, decide. In fact, I wonder what the hell happened to all the files that Thorkelson had. But it was, of course, that was Thorkelson.
How did he gather that information?
I don't really know.
Okay. So when you left Annapolis, you came home and then the war started. So what did you do during the war?
Well, I came home and got married. And then I went out